Have you ever seen someone that you can't look away from, no matter how hard you try? I know you have seen her, Matthew. You were awake, and you saw her face looking at you. All that love, all that peace that radiated throughout the room. You were awake, and you need to be awake for her now. Azamian stood over him like a stone angel watching over a cemetery. Everything became colder when he got here. Just his presence made his spine stiffen and everything around him grow dark. You know, the sound of my voice, talking like this, makes me feel human. The angel pauses and is so quiet it doesn't even sound like he is breathing. She loves me. You know that. She is the emotional part of my being, the beautiful portion of my being. You could see her right now if you would just open your eyes. You're not real. Matthew finally spoke. Oh, you aren't. You can't be. There was silence between the two for a moment. The water splashing on the river's shore is soothing. Matthew, you are not the only one in the world. I am the only one here. His retort was sharp and sudden, stopping Azamian in his tracks. Matthew, I never wished for this to happen to you. I never wanted to bring this pain upon you. He pauses for a moment. It was not fair for me to bring you into something that was never any of your concern. And I apologize. Human souls are strong, but they break easily. His words trail off, knowing that Matthew is not listening to him. Matthew, people need you. You still have a life to live. I'm speaking as humanly as I can to you, but the one angel that I care about right now is crying over your body. The one true beauty in this world. The one thing that I could look at forever and never tire of. She is the one that can save even the most bloodied past, the most broken soul. And Father knows yours is not going to last much longer if you stay here. With yourself. No one should be alone. I understand that more than you could ever know. He stays silent after that and just stands there thinking to himself, leaving things unsaid for good reason. Azamian, why me? Matthew finally asks softly, not really expecting a coherent answer. Why not you? He pauses, and Matthew seemed to be getting the answer he expected as he continues to elaborate. Matthew, when I asked you if you would say yes to God's brood and do his bidding, you said yes. Kneeling before me, crying, your soul was already broken, and yet you were still the kindest person out of everyone in your world. You did not let your pain ruin your integrity and love that you have for every person, no matter how poorly they may have treated you or their fellow man. You did not let that pain define you. You did not let your fear and your misgivings change you, and even now you are thinking of her tear-laden eyes that watch over you right this minute. You are thinking about how much she loves everything about you, no matter your past, present, or future. She is your guardian. She is the only one who will be able to help you. Matthew finally looked up at the angel, and he was looking back at his tear-filled eyes. Matthew, stop this. Wake up and smell the flowers. He places his hand on Matthew's shoulder. Am I a good man? You are a better man than I. Morals are not my strong suit. He looks tired. Do you remember seeing her as you watched through my eyes, as she showed me what love could be? I know you were awake. Matthew nodded and looked down shamefully. I remember. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to pry. I just could not look away from her. I know. Azamian looked over the river and sighed for the first time. You love her. Matthew knew he was right. Matthew, I am dying. As he looked up at this angelic warrior, he noticed what he meant. He was older looking and pale, his eyes growing more tired the longer he was here. The life was being drained from him as they spoke. Sometimes life is not as fair as we would wish it to be. And sometimes you need to accept your fate. Azamian. The angel closed his eyes and put a finger to his lips, signaling silence. And they looked out upon the river. This is quite a beautiful place, Matthew. You have a beautiful mind. He pauses. You do not dwell. He says, short of breath, Matthew, could you do one thing for me? His words were soft and forced. Of course, Matthew said softly, watching the angel decline in presence and power. Can you describe her for me? I seem to have lost my way. His speech slowing, and he seems to be falling as he closes his eyes. Yes. Matthew paused for a moment and looked back at the river. She has violet eyes, the most beautiful you could ever see on another human being. She has the most beautiful, gentle, pale skin, always soft to the touch. Her curly, dark hair twists around your fingers when you slide your hands through it. He pauses once more and looks over at Azamian, his skin looking ashen and weak. She has the most beautiful smile, one that humans can only dream about, that only one can touch. She is the most beautiful person in the world, and she deserves to be treated that way. She deserves to be admired and adored. And Azamian, He reaches to catch him as he started to fall. Matthew, keep her safe. Please. Wake up. For her. His breath is labored, and if the angel didn't have wings, his body could have flown away on its own. It was so weak and frail. Samian, wait, I don't... It was too late. Don't come back, he whispered as the angel disappeared slowly. Matthew was left there, alone by the river that lapped at his feet and sang to him. Sweet river songs that could only be heard by him. The trees around chimed in as the breeze flew by. The chorus of the world would not be silenced, and the symphony would always be heard. The beauty, the purity, all of it. He was happy here, in his own little world. But there were other people in his life that he could not leave. He could not give them up. They did not give up on him. And she would be there, by his side, for as long as he lived. She loved him. Azamian? Asa, is that you? Say something, please. Oh, Father, please. Her voice was shrill and concerned. Fear filled the empty space. Oh, please come back to me, please. He could feel her tears falling on his cheek as he began to stir. Where am I? His raspy voice made it into the air weakly, but it was enough to send her into a frenzy. Oh, as a father, I was so worried. I thought you were lost. Oh, my love. She kissed him shakily and cupped his stubble-clad face. This was the woman. This was her. But the news that he had was going to tear her apart. Sweetie. His voice was still soft and raspy. Sweetie, I'm not Azamian. His voice trailed off from a lack of breath. She stopped kissing his face and stared at him, confused and filling with fear. What? Who are you, then? She lets go of his face and folds in on herself, keeping her hands close to her chest. She stared at him as she waited for an answer. Matthew. I'm Matthew. He told me... His voice choked up, and he cleared it to continue. He told me that he loved you, and that you were his good half. He looked over at Sweetie, his eyes glazed over, half open from being in stasis for so long. I was dreaming about you, he whispered softly to her. She put her hands to her mouth, and the tears started falling down her face uncontrollably. No. He can't be. You are his vessel. He nodded in response to her. She covered her face as she cried. Matthew watched her in quiet anguish. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, he choked out after 1 second too many of seeing her cry. She quickly wiped her tears as she tried to compose herself. No, it's not your fault. She sighs. Her voice is shaky, but she still manages to look at him and smile. We'll help you get back home to your life, she states as she stands up. You probably want to be left alone. We will come and get you when you are feeling better. She smiles kindly at him, care filling every inch of her face. Matthew quickly reaches up and grabs her hand weakly before she starts to walk away. Wait. Please don't go. I don't want to be alone. He looks scared and weak, but he lets go of her hand quickly. I'm sorry, I don't have anywhere to go. The last time I was on Earth, it was 1990, and I didn't have a home then either. He sighs softly and looks down, ashamed. He said that you could help me. You could heal me. He stays quiet as she stares at him, filled with sadness and mourning. I'm so sorry, he says, choking up with emotion. I just saw how you healed him of his violent past and feelings, and I thought you could help me. But I can imagine how you must be feeling after losing the one you love. Tears start to fall down his face now as Sweetie stares at him, completely mortified and pale. Oh, Matthew, she finally let out under her breath. Have you been in there this whole time? She asks softly and stares at him still. He looks up at her wistfully and nods, just enough to answer her. Oh. She starts to grow pink on her soft, pale cheeks. And you were awake? She seems calmer than before. Matthew nods again in a similar fashion. She looks at him fondly and sighs. I think I remember feeling you. You were a good presence, she says softly to him and smiles, gloom in her face still but trying to be strong. You can come home with us. You're a good man. Matthew immediately broke down and started crying. He held his face, covering it as he softly let all his fears leave his body. All it took were just a few words from the right person. Oh, Matthew. Sweetie looks at him, worry in her eyes, as she leans over him and hugs his head close to her chest and hums. Everything is going to be okay.